Steve and Abby, I wanted to talk to you first and ask you the obvious question, really. You wrote the film together. Can you say a little about the inception of the film and what the collaboration was between the two of you?
Okay. Well, really it started with, we share an American agent, and they try and put people together for the alchemy to watch, see how it works. And we met for an hour, both of us trying to think of excuses how quick we could make that meeting. And 3.5 hours later, we were still talking. And I think it really came from a myriad of conversation and more than anything, just a real connection with someone and feeling like you could talk incredibly honestly with them. And I think you can probably count those people on one hand, really. And I now consider Steve one of those. So really, that was the starting point for me for that film.
For me, it's kind of strange that you come into your 40s and you think, that's it for you as far as friends are concerned, as far as close relationships are concerned. As far as I'm concerned, and I met Abby Morgan, and we just had this connection. We had this passionate, argumentative conversation about life and everything else, and that was the start of it. We started talking about the internet, we started talking about pornography on the internet, and we ended up with sex addiction, and that was the seed of the film, the beginning.
And then, Ian, can I ask you a little about your kind of part in all of this and, developing and producing? What, were there particular kind of obstacles to overcome, or how was that process?
I think the first obstacle was trying to get people to actually talk to us and talk to us openly. And certainly we had troubles in the UK getting through to groups who would introduce us to people that might be able to talk about similar circumstances to Brandon. And then we sort of hit a bit of a gold mine in New York, and within a blink of an eye we were there, and I think also we had the same sort of feeling as that. We were still sort of exploring whether this was a film, and then we went there, and it felt like almost we had a week of maths lessons where we heard the most intense stories of people, just struggling through their lives, and I think at that point that's when we realised it was a film.
Mm. So then the setting of the film in New York came out of that, the fact that the people who you were really talking to were, they were New York stories that you were hearing, or because New York seems like such an integral part of the film.
Yes, but it sort of started in London, and the wind blew us in the direction of New York because no one wanted to speak to us. So we spoke to these two experts in the field, and they introduced us to people who had this affliction, who had this addiction, and that was it. That was the starting point. And I thought to myself, well, why don't we make the film, in New York? It seemed to be the obvious thing to do. So it happened in a roundabout way that we ended up sort of making the film in New York. But I've been going to New York since Elvis died and the blackout since '77. The majority of my family live in New York, so it wasn't sort of. And I go there, 2-3 times a year because of my other work. So it wasn't unfamiliar to me at all. So it seems to be the sort of the right place to start. And again, I didn't want to put my stencil onto this particular project. I don't think we want to put our stencil on it. We wanted it to tell us what it wanted, what this film wanted, and therefore we went with what it wanted.
We've talked a little about the collaboration between yourself and Abby, but of course it's the second time for you and Michael working together too. And I wanted Michael to say a little bit about that, if you don't mind. Particularly with a film like this, where it seems to be so important that there's a kind of relationship of trust between the two of you.
Yeah, it wasn't really ever a question in my mind whether if given the opportunity, I was going to get to work with Steve again. So in 2008, he said to me after dinner, that was the House of Parliament. It was for Film 4 and Film 4's contribution to film. And he sort of whispered in my ear what the sort of idea was. And I said, well, just tell me, when and where. And it was really that simple.
It is particular, but I think it's all inclusive. And when I see Brandon on screen, of course he is this person suffering with this addiction, suffering with this his addictions, his compulsions. But at the same time, it's kind of has a broad reach, a broad stroke. This character, and the evidence of that is in the cinema, and when how women respond to the movie and how men respond to the movie. I think at the end, often the situation we found at the end of the movie, men start to cough, and start getting their phones out and start twittering. Oh, it's over. Okay, yeah. And the ladies are more like, this is interesting, and this is something which this is kind of it sort of tells something true. So there is every individual, I imagine, has some kind of relationship to brand in one way. Yes, it is a particular. A unique situation, but it does have it has a broad reach, I think.
Yeah, I mean, the first thing I realized, having read the script for the first time, was that I didn't want to put any mask on or hide behind any sort of characteristic defense with the character. I just thought that would be too much of a cop-out. There were things that when I read the script, I was like, wow, I can relate to this guy and this sort of and for me it was important that he does appear as every guy in the street, that you would recognize and see on the way to work or at work. It just seemed to me much more real and much more interesting.
Do I remember there was there was a lot of kind of downtime with Steve where we would go and see people and then we would walk normally to breakfast. Food was quite an integral part of this whole thing. And we'd often be really quiet, and then it would sort of bubble up. And I think it does affect you, but ultimately I think, one of the things about, you do these junkets and you talk and you hear yourself repeat the same boring crap to everybody. But one of the things I really have heard again and again is that what we try and do is create a piece of art or create, it's creation, it's fiction. And Michael's craft is that he's able to take himself there, but ultimately he's an actor. And I think as a writer, from my point of view, is you go there and you connect. You have to connect in the room, but just as you would as a human being, because you hear someone's appalling story and you realise they've destroyed often the people they've loved the most with what they do. And that's when you come away going, God, this is a compulsion that you can relate to on a tiny level or an extreme level. And I think, when you just allow that to exist in the room and then on the page, and then that carries on to the actor, then it moves beyond you, really, so it becomes something other than you. But I think probably Steve and Michael have a more interesting response to it than I do.
I can't remember the question.
Did it affect your relationship with your wife? No. Sorry, Bianca. I'm sorry. Cheap.
No, what it did, it questioned me. I think, both of us, I think, within the research, you end up questioning yourself. I mean, with any addiction, and the source of the addiction and anything else, as a human being, you start questioning yourself. I mean, you're walking down the street and you're thinking, my God, you're looking at people, and my God, maybe he, maybe she, maybe all of us, maybe, it really, it does, the switch does come on in your head. And it's like Freaks, the film. It's not alien. It's one of us. This person, Brandon, is I find he's a beautiful person. He's trying, and that's all we can do. All we can do is try. That's it. End of story.
I think all the time, if you're sort of really working intensely on something and close to something, therefore close to the person that you're trying to understand, there is a residue there that you take home at the end of the day, But it becomes, for me, a self-indulgent thing if you start to sort of wallow in that. And the thing is, I've got to come home and I've got to get ready for tomorrow's scene. So there's always that professional switch in your head, And the thing that I will say is that I don't have any more answers than I did going into the film. That's for sure. But I know that I've asked a lot of questions, and I just try and sort of understand. By understanding Brandon, perhaps I can understand something a little bit more about myself, and that's really the most important thing for me to do in my job, is to try and understand and not sort of judge, or like I said, you know, before, rather than sort of putting a character on it where I can stand safely at a distance from it. No, to sort of, you know, embrace it, and you know, we're all sort of made up of the same stuff, and we all want the same things, so it's not too much of a reach to step into those shoes, you know.
No, look, Michael is an extraordinary physical actor, but also a very there's this kind of femininity in Michael. I'm sorry, Mike, you're on the stage with me, but there's some kind of beauty about him as a man, and often no. It's not meant to be humorous at all. Far from it, in fact. Often that doesn't get translated on screen. You know, it's one of those things which sort of stirs inside us, but often doesn't sort of get translated onto screen. And I think that's extraordinarily important. And I think Michael is just a real artist because he has the capacity to translate that. I mean, you know, you go to cinema, you see stuff on television. There isn't a lot of people actually can translate or stir a certain kind of thing which is within us all, and put it out on the screen. I think that his talent is amazing, and I'm just so happy to be able to work with him and happy to call him a friend. And hope we see more of him with clothes or without clothes.